I'd gotten a tea towel from my little boy last Mother's Day. It had pictures of flowers and butterflies with little fairies dancing across it. My husband told me that Everett had saved up and paid for it himself, his gap-toothed grin beaming as he handed the coins to the clerk. I never would have thought when I got the towel that I'd be using it to keep the blood inside of his tiny body, that the fairies and the flowers would all become muddled in the dark red as it spilled from his arteries. His father had been away on a business trip. Selling condos in Florida often meant meetings with seniors in New York. We didn't mind, though. The money was good, and I worked at the senior center while Everett went to school. It was a good system. It worked for us, right up until the day it didn't. We normally visited a food truck for Taco Tuesdays, but I'd had a stressful day and didn't feel up to it. We argued for a bit, but Everett accepted the trade-off to order pizza from home. "It has to be taco pizza, though," he said, and I had laughed. "No problem, buddy. I know just the place." Reflecting, I wish we had stuck to tradition. Maybe the burglar would have been gone with only my pearl earrings, instead of turning Everett into collateral damage. He punched in the code and opened the door, throwing his bag on the floor and bolting up to his room, just like always. I stood in the doorway and heard his uncertain voice say, "Mom?" before shouting, "Mom!" and all the hairs on my neck stood at once. A breeze tickled my skin, and I saw the patio door open across from me. I grabbed the mace from my purse, a relic from my youth that I kept just in case, and I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. Something's wrong. Someone's here. I made it to the top of the stairs on legs made of jelly, and froze when a voice growled,
"Stay where you are, bitch."
and I saw a man holding Everett at the end of the hall, a knife pressed to his throat. "Please don't hurt him," I tried to say, but my throat only let me whisper,
"I'm going out the way I came. Back up and don't do anything stupid, and no one gets hurt."
I nodded my compliance.
"Drop the can,"
he said, and I did. I walked down the stairs backwards, slow as possible with my hands raised, and the man followed me down and through to the kitchen. He sidestepped around me, backing toward the door and out onto the concrete patio. I tried to warn him, but my voice caught in my throat, fear freezing my vocal cords. His foot caught the edge of Everett's scooter and sent him sprawling onto the lawn, his blade flashing in the sunlight as he went down. Everett fell forward and clutched his neck, making a terrible gurgling sound, and the burglar scampered to his feet and ran for the fence. I fell to my knees beside my boy and brought him into the house, my body moving independently from my mind as I pulled him inside and laid him down on the cool tiled floor. I yanked the towel from the oven door and pressed it on his neck, the blood saturating it. His eyes flickered, and all I could smell was pennies. "Everett! Everett! Stay with me! Stay awake!" I screamed, and his eyes fluttered. The bleeding slowed, and I grabbed for the phone, sitting just out of reach. I let go for a second and snatched the phone, and the blood started pouring again. I reapplied pressure, and Everett's hands fell from his neck to the floor. His skin almost matched the white ceramic. I don't remember dialing, but I was on with the operator. They didn't get past the opening line of their script before I screamed, 3210 Everglades Boulevard South. I need an ambulance. My son's been cut." "All right, ma'am," they replied, as if I had ordered coffee. "The ambulance is on the way. I need you to keep pressure on the wound. Where was he cut?" "His neck." I started to sob, my vision blurring as I switched to speakerphone with my free hand and set the phone down on a bare part of tile. the only small square not covered in blood. He's been cut on his neck. Is he conscious? No, his eyes are closed. I heard the sirens approach as she said, "They're on the way, ma'am. Keep pressure on his neck, but don't press on his windpipe. We need to keep that open." Oh fuck, I thought, and laid my head next to his chest. He's still breathing, but it's really shallow. The door was already open, so the paramedics got inside easily to take over. The phone was kicked out of the way, and I was left looking at Everett's feet, his torso obscured by the paramedics' wide shoulders, and clutching the bloody tea towel to my chest. They had him stable and on a gurney within an intermediate time. I can't tell you if it took an hour or 30 seconds. My mind was too far gone to comprehend what was in front of me. They loaded him into the ambulance and I jumped into the back, holding his hand the entire way to the hospital, as the large paramedic held his neck closed. I think I was crying while we drove, but I was too numb to say for certain. I knew I felt like I should be crying, like I should be wailing and pulling my hair out, but I couldn't access it. Like if I went there, I would never come back. We screeched into Our Lady of Mercy, and they unloaded Everett. A woman in a white coat met us at the ambulance and rushed him inside, while an administrator asked me questions as we followed. After filling out the forms and putting down the insurance information, they sent me to a room filled with glossy magazines and short purple chairs to wait. A man sat there, beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, reading a worn copy of the National Geographic with an alligator on the cover. I remember the cover well, because the green tracksuit he was wearing matched the gator perfectly. I still had the towel, and I sat in one of the purple chairs and stared at it. I had lost track of all my surroundings, my vision focusing on the ruined cloth, staring at it as blood clotted on my hands and in the fibers. I had thought, why the hell didn't someone take this from me? When the man spoke and I jumped out of my skin.
"What have you got there?"
He asked, his voice a rich tenor. He'd folded the magazine and set it in his lap, leaning towards me with an eyebrow raised. It was...
"I think I can see. Someone hurt pretty bad then? Someone you love?"
I couldn't hold back and tears squirted forth as I went from calm to ugly crying in a nanosecond. The man just nodded and set the magazine on the table. His hair was cut into a tight white afro that contrasted the dark umber of his skin. He was old and wizened and kind as he said,
"Do they know if he'll make it? Your little boy."
I stopped crying and looked at him. "How did you know it was my boy?"
50-50 guess. You're crying like it's your child in there. It's a different kind of cry. I know.
He tapped the side of his nose, his smile fading for only a moment. I suppose that's true, I thought, nodding and sniffling.
"I can save him."
What?
"Your boy. I can make sure he lives."
What the hell are you talking about? Do you work here? Are you some sort of doctor? He laughed.
No. Not a doctor like the ones here.
He leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs.
But I've been called a doctor before.
I felt my body waking up from the numbness, crying out that I'm in some sort of danger, sitting with this extremely relaxed-looking man and all alone. But my interest was piqued. I remember the smell of him. He was rich and herby, but floral. Once I smelled him, I found it harder to look away. I needed to find out what he could do. What kind of doctor are you? He had his legs crossed, foot bouncing on his knee, and he leaned forward and smiled. His teeth gleamed white except for the left canine, that was plated in gold. He looked around to make sure we were alone, and whispered,
"The witching kind."
I'd lived in Naples my entire life and gone through a Wiccan phase in high school, so I had heard of witch doctors before. They were always portrayed as purveyors of evil and darkness, a stark contrast to the man who sat before me with his yellow flip-flop dangling off his raised foot. What is it you would want in return? I need to use caution here.
"So you've heard of me then?"
His smile grew wider.
"I want an even trade, that's all. Not asking too much, really."
He produced a toothpick and placed it in his mouth, leaned back into the chair, and folded his hands in his lap, looking up at the ceiling. What would you consider a fair trade for a life? I asked.
"Not a life, a soul,"
He said. Chewing his wooden pick, he lazily looked around everywhere but at me. Whose soul? Mine? He shrugged.
"Seems fair, don't it? Your boy will live. And you will survive it too, don't worry."
But what happens?
"Sorry to rush you."
He snapped forward in his chair. His smile vanished and his smell filled my nostrils, making my eyes flutter.
"I got other people I need to see. If you ain't interested, I'd best be moving on."
He stood and turned to walk away, pulling a hat from beside him on the seat that I hadn't noticed, and placed it on his head. A canary yellow fedora of all ungodly things. Maybe he is evil. Wait! I shouted just before he turned a corner. If he's here, he must know something. He said it's a fair deal he wants. Does that mean he's collecting a soul regardless? If he doesn't take my soul, will he take Everett's? What do I need to do? He turned around and his smile was back.
"Come with me. No time to waste,"
He said and hustled down the hall, leaving me to catch up. He disappeared down the stairwell, and by the time I caught him in the parking lot, I was out of breath and squinting. The sun blinded me as it met the horizon. How long have I been here?
"Get in. We need to make it there before the sun sets fully. Otherwise, things might not go so well."
He opened the door to an old tan Lincoln and reached over to unlock the passenger side. I looked over my shoulder at the plain gray building, and he shouted out to me.
"Your boy will be safe with the docs in there."
I tore myself away, pulled in by the scent of herbs spilling from the car. I had to leave. Had to leave so I could save him. I slammed the car door as the engine roared to life. There was a beaded car seat cover across the entire front seat that clacked with every bump in the road as we drew closer to the edge of town. I had to ask, where are we going, and what happens if we don't get there before the sun sets? He sucked on his toothpick a couple of times, rolled down the window with an electric whir, and threw it out.
"I need the light to trade your souls. If we don't have a little bit of light, won't work."
And where are we going? He glanced over at me and shrugged.
"My house, of course."
Of course, random mystery stranger. Of course. We rolled off the road and into a driveway I would never have seen if we hadn't turned onto it. The dense foliage rolled by the window, and we drove deeper up the drive, the canopy blocking most of the sun coming through and taking us into another world. The house, or rather the shack, came into view, and I don't exaggerate when I tell you dueling banjos wouldn't be out of place on its front step. Black and orange chickens roamed the yard and skittered out of the way as we parked, clucking with indignation.
"We need to be quick,"
The man said, and was out the door and into the house as fast as a python. I followed him in. The interior was tidy, with dated furniture in a large open space. Not what I had expected from the run-down exterior. It was old, certainly, but it was clean and smelled like hibiscus. A pre-war era fan circulated the air with a low hum, and the dusty beige curtains moved slightly with each pass. He threw open a trunk and pulled out a mason jar, unscrewing the lid. He poured the black peppery substance down in a circle on an area rug that looked like it had seen plenty of use, then pointed to the middle.
"Stand there,"
he said. No more smiling, no more beguiling. He was all business.
"We're only getting one shot."
He hurried out into the yard as I stepped across the line of the stinky black powder. I thought about all the dead chickens and the blood spraying everywhere that you see in movies surrounding hoodoo. With that thought, the extreme heat and humidity of the shack, and the stench of rotten eggs the powder gave off, I threw up a bit in my mouth. He came back in and held a wooden staff that had a circle of dried reed bound to the top, and a purple gemstone tangled in its center. He went to the curtain and slid the staff into a ring that jutted out at the base of the window.
"Stay perfect and still. Right there,"
he said, fiddling with the staff until the purple caught the failing light. It flashed across my face and blinded me. Does that need to be in my eyes?
"Course. They're the window,"
he said. Of course. I forced my eyes open. What good are they if I can't see Everett again, I thought. He started to chant, but I don't know what he said. He didn't speak Creole like I expected, and it certainly wasn't English. I don't think it was a language that humankind used anymore. It was something that was long ago lost in the swamp, and it rolled and slithered past his lips. The curtains billowed in, and the shack filled with the scent of moss and still water, and the scream of birds. He chanted louder to be heard over the din, and I stood as still as I could. I let that amethyst light blind me in the hopes that I hadn't gone insane, that I was doing something to save my son instead of waiting helplessly, reading about fucking alligators in a magazine. He stopped chanting.
"It's done,"
he said, and shifted the light from my eyes. I blinked, but all I could see were purple spots everywhere, and my eyes hurt.
"Let's get back to your boy now. He'll be wanting to see you."
I nodded and stumbled my way to the door. That's it? That was the big spell? Is that all?
"Did you need something else? I offer many services, though you've given me your biggest bargaining chip already."
He smiled and pointed at the stone that was glowing, not from the sunlight, which was quickly fading, but from inside, like something was trapped within. He plucked it from the string and put it in a worn leather pouch. The pouch glowed when he opened it, like there were plenty more souls inside.
"I can take your eyes and give you the ability to see the future. Maybe you would like to give me your toes and I'll make someone fall in love with you."
A shiver rolled up my spine, and I felt like the bargain might not have been as harmless as I'd thought. "I don't need anything." I rubbed my head. A dull pounding had come on from the stress and the witchy weirdness. "Take me back to Everett, please." He pointed to the door and flashed me his golden canine.
"After you, Lydia."
I walked toward the door and rubbed my eyes as I crossed the porch. I opened them as the floor fell out from under my feet, and I thought I had missed a stair. But instead of hitting the ground, I swirled through a purple cloud of smoke, falling endlessly as I let out a scream that ripped my throat to shreds. I jerked awake in my purple chair at the hospital, the bloody tea towel still clutched in my fingers. I dropped it and looked around, rubbing my eyes. What the hell just happened? Was that a dream? I heard the padding of soft-soled shoes as the doctor that admitted Everett approached me. "Mrs. Cole?" "Yes. Is Everett going to be okay?" "He seems to be doing fine. We closed up the scratch with some butterfly stitches, and you guys can head home now." "We can?" She looked at me, her eyebrows knitted together. He had a mild laceration. It was on his neck, but it was nothing serious. "Go home. You look like you need some rest." He's right there, room 418. She patted my arm as she bustled off to another crisis, and I felt like a rock had been lifted off my chest, allowing me to breathe. I went to the room, and Everett was sitting on the end of the bed, snacking on a Jell-O cup. The color had returned to his cheeks, and he had a small bandage taped over the wound. I moved to the bed, unable to comprehend this miracle. I pulled back the gauze to see the cut, a minor laceration with a few butterfly stitches. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. I walked out of the room, building speed as I headed to the waiting room. I found the towel lying beside my chair, and I turned it over in my hands to see only the faintest line of blood splashing one of the flower's petals. A cold wash and the towel would be restored. Tears flowed down my hot cheeks. It worked. It really worked. I saved him. "Mom," Everett said, standing behind me. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, dear. Let's go get tacos first, though. I bet you're starving." A quick stop at Taco Bell. Not the quality we normally go for, but it's late, and we made it home a little before midnight. Bath time skipped, and exhaustion sinking in. Everett headed straight to bed with no complaints, closing his door behind him. My adrenaline fired through me as I replayed the evening. My brain whirled through the details and events that transpired, wondering, did it all really happen? Was it all some sort of dream? But I couldn't convince myself that the things I saw were apparitions. I knew it was real. I felt that gem burn into my eyes, and saw the glow once the witch doctor was done. I thought about calling John, but it was too late, and there was nothing I could tell him at that point that wouldn't make me sound insane. I flicked on the television to see if I could find anything to watch, and settled on an old sitcom I'd seen 100 times. The live audience laughed, and I could feel myself nodding off. The clock in the hall chimed once, and jolted me awake. I shut off the TV and headed to bed, long past my bedtime. I made it to the top of the stairs, and the hair on the back of my neck tingled, sending shivers across my skin. I whipped around, expecting to see the intruder had come back, but no one was there. A breeze blew again, and I heard the curtains rattle on the patio door, the door I thought I'd closed. I headed back down the stairs, and the curtains kept clacking as the breeze came through the open door, little gusts of breath pushing them in. Whoosh, clack. Whoosh, clack. I went to close it, my skin crawling, and saw Everett's scooter sitting out on the patio. The scooter that almost ended his life. I told him every damn day to put that thing away. I grabbed the scooter, overcome with rage at the simplest and stupidest thing, and threw it towards the pool with all my might. The handlebars whacked my arm on the way by, making it go numb. It missed by a mile, and I felt like an idiot for throwing it. I rubbed my arm and cursed, inspecting the soon-to-be bruise before I looked at the scooter again. That's when I saw it. Across the pool, and just outside the reach of the patio's lights, stood the black shape of a massive hound, with its shoulders bunched up and ready to lunge. Its eyes glowed like hot coals, swirling with orange and yellows as it eyed me up. I tried to run. I tried to pull my eyes away from the swirling madness I saw in that giant black beast's eyes, but I froze, and the hound launched itself at me. I screamed, but it cut short as I felt its teeth pierce the skin on my throat, felt its hot breath on my face for an instant before my blood was pouring down the front of my shirt and onto the grass. I fell to the ground, and the hound gave me a shake. I felt my neck cartilage crack. All the pain in my body, all the nerves misfiring and sending panic signals, stopped. I couldn't feel the patio beneath me, or the breeze on my exposed arms. I felt only cold as the hound trotted away, its work finished, and the light faded to black. For the briefest of seconds, I laid there in the darkness, unable to feel my body, and thinking about Everett upstairs in his room, safe in bed. In my last flicker of consciousness, I thought to myself, fair trade. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. That was Everglades by Eric B. Hunter. Links to all my shit are down in the description. Like, subscribe, and comment. And be good to animals, even people.